Mayor, Your Excellencies, all guests here. It's a privilege for me to speak these few words in the city where I was born, The Hague. I was asked to talk about accelerating youth empowerment for sustainable development. And when I became professor in Leiden, I had to give a ritual inaugural lecture, and I called it Silver Lining Africa. And I show you how that looks. This is Silver Lining Africa. So I decided to call my little talk Silver Lining Africa's Youth. In the year 1650, long ago, Africa had the same number of people as Europe. 100 million. At the time, that was 17% of the world population, both in Africa and in Europe. You all know what happened afterwards. In the year 1900, Europe had gained, and at that time had 650 million inhabitants. And that was at that time 25% of the world population. Africa still had 100 million, and at the time it was only 4%. You can see the difference. At the moment, there are more people in Africa than in Europe. In Africa now, there are 15%, 1 out of every 7 world citizens is African. In Europe, it's only 11%. And do you know what the predictions are for 40 years from now, in the year 2050? The predictions are that Africa will have 2 billion people, and that would then be 22% of the world population, while Europe will remain at the 800 billion, which will then only be less than 10%. So, demographically, it's Silver Lining Africa. Another thing that is happening in Africa is an urban explosion. Africa is now the most rapidly urbanizing, city-forming continent on Earth. In the year 1960, when African countries, most of them, became independent, only 20%, 1 out of every 5 Africans was a person in a city, in a town. Now it's more than 40, and very soon it will be more than half of the African population living in cities. And there are already 4 super mega cities in Africa. Do you know which 4 those are? Which are the 4 huge mega cities belonging to the top 50 cities of the world now? Cairo is one. Lagos is the second one. South Africa, the Rand area, is the third one. Kinshasa is the fourth one. Huge cities. And already 1 in every 8 Africans now lives in a city with more than 1 million inhabitants. So Africa is changing. The people who study populations now talk about the youth bulge. And the economists talk about the demographic dividend. I would like you to ask yourself a very simple question. What percentage of the people in Africa are youth between 10 and 30 years of age? Then, what percentage in Europe of the people between 10 and 30 years of age? Do you have an idea in your mind? I'll tell you the situation according to the population people who study populations. In Europe, only 25% of the population is between 10 and 30 years of age. In Africa, 40% or even more. That is huge. So the youth is really there in Africa. And the perspective with which people are looking at Africa is shifting. changing. Look at agriculture. So many people still talk about stagnating agriculture. If you look at the figures, Africa can now feed its population better than 50 years ago. Look at the people in Africa. Even acknowledging the fact of HIV/AIDS and all the diseases, but the life expectancy in Africa is much higher now than it used to be in 1960, on average. Africans, and especially African youth, is much better educated. And many more people, and a far higher percentage of the children, go to primary and secondary school compared to 50 years ago. If you look at the economies of Africa, Professor Rona already told you that, in the last 10 years, Africa as a whole is experiencing rapid economic growth. According to The Economist, I think many of you will know that journal, according to The Economist, among the 10 countries with the highest growth in the last 10 years, how many were African? The 10 fastest growing economies in the world, how many were African? 6 out of the 10. And for the next 5 years, how many of the countries, the fastest growing countries in the world, the 10 fastest growing countries in the world, how many of them will be African, according to the predictions? 7. 7 out of the 10 fastest growing economic countries in the world will be African. Now, Africa is full of energy, and a lot of that energy is youthful energy. So, if you talk about African youth, do you talk about a fountain of energy, or do you talk about a source of trouble? Probably both. Africa's youth is creative, it's with high expectations, and it has a global orientation. The African youth is ever more looking to Asia, to Latin America, and no longer so much to Europe and the United States. African youth is well informed and critical, and African youth is getting angry and impatient, and it's ready to take over, and we can see that in North Africa. We will see it in some other places in Africa. So the challenge is how to harvest this, what economists call demographic dividend, and this youthful energy. And the key, I think, and many people here will agree, is employment creation. That's the number one thing. And how can you create more employment? By stimulating entrepreneurial activities, by training, by education, and by preventing that too much of that youthful energy goes into criminal or violent or destructive activities, which means maintaining the rule of law and create supportive institutions for creative economies of the youth. Let me read 2 small quotes from one of the key people who know about Africa's youth. It's from the Population Reference Bureau in the United States, and it's Laurie Ashford. She asks herself, will Africa's youthful population be a risk or an opportunity? And she writes this: Africa's young population will be the driving force between economic prosperity in future decades, but only if policies and programs are in place to enhance their opportunities and encourage smaller families. That's one. Second, the key policy actions needed throughout sub-Saharan Africa are those that expand youth opportunities, give them the skills to participate fully in the economy and public life, and promote healthy behaviors. So, the African youth is in need of more supportive states for their creative economies. And those states should be reliable, they should organize trust, and they should mobilize resources for sustainable growth. And they should be more caring for their poor and ultra-poor people, including the youth among them. They should better take care of providing local public goods and better response to demands for maintaining and creating global public goods. I would like to end with two quotes, and a third small one, from a book that the African Studies Center published in 2005 about the youth of Africa. It's only 6 years ago, and the language is more doom and gloom than Silver Lining Africa. You see, there is change. But let me still read it, because what they say is still worthwhile to share with you. They write, "Even educated youth are being confronted with a lack of opportunities, blocked social mobility, and despair about their future. African youth, while forming a numerical majority, largely feels excluded from power, is socio-economically marginalized, and thwarted in its ambitions. And the aim of a center like ours, with our African colleagues, and there are many, is to advance the comparative study of youth. We do that by working together with many African researchers, and if you leave this place, there will be on the table a collection of everything we published in the last 7 years, organized by countries. So if you come from Nigeria, you see what we do in Nigeria. If you come from Kenya, you can see what we have written about Kenya. If you come from Sudan, you can see what we have done in Sudan. And I also invite you to glance and get a copy of Understanding Africa. And we hope to work together with the African ambassadors and the African embassies in the Netherlands, and we hope to contribute to youthful energy. Thank you very much.